Hello everyone, I am Fergus Crawley and this is the Pig Dog, or Odysseus as he is better known by the government and the vets. And as this year's theme on Mental Health Awareness Week is loneliness, I thought I would share just how much of an impact this little man has had on me and how he really brought me out of an extended period of loneliness back in 2016. So Odie is a 6-year-old French Bulldog who acts like he is 6 months old. And if he didn't have the grey mask here, which he's not very happy about me showing you, you would guess he was a year, maybe 2 years old at most due to your behaviour. But for a bit of context, I went to university in 2014. I went to Durham to study theology and religion and very quickly found myself feeling rather isolated, rather lonely due to not being around like-minded people in halls, not having a team sport to play, having had to give up rugby the year before due to concussions, and ultimately just not being in the most open-minded situation in terms of how to meet new people, because for so much of my life I'd had immediate social access and I just felt a little bit on the back foot, and I had a very masculine perspective of myself. I had a very ego-driven, very ambitious expectation of myself, which meant that all of a sudden I was being really hard on the way that I was feeling because I felt like it was my fault, like I was a bit of a freak in the corner for not having any friends, like this loneliness that I was experiencing was my fault and I was doing something wrong, and it felt like I was losing a sense of control. And if you'd asked Fergus in 2014, does mental health exist, does depression exist, I would have told you no. It's a convenient excuse for people to avoid responsibility or not work hard. Whereas I very quickly found out not long afterwards that that was not the case, as 2 weeks after I started university, I've retrospectively been diagnosed as severely depressed because I kept it entirely to myself for the following 18 months. That's why it's been retrospectively diagnosed. I won't bore you with the details for the next 18 months, but long story short, I ultimately attempted suicide on the 9th of May 2016, which is exactly 6 years to the day, coincidentally, since this year's Mental Health Awareness Week started. So, coincidence? Yes. What that means, I don't know. It just seems strangely neat and strangely poignant. So I'm reflecting on it quite a lot this week and thought I would share this story with you all. So, came around for my suicide attempt and I knew that something had to change. I knew that the desperation, the isolation and the loneliness that I'd been feeling had to change, and I knew that keeping it to myself wasn't the option anymore, but there was nobody that I was confident talking to. I was so fearful of exposing myself as weak, exposing myself as vulnerable, it would let down the expectation of me as a man, that whilst I did feel desperate, whilst I did feel completely alone in that moment, I still was resilient to talking about it. And then 2 days later, I got a message from one of my good friends, Andy Smith, who sent me a message saying, I'm getting a puppy from this litter next week, you in? And I think he was just sort of flexing on me a little bit, being like, haha, look at this cute little puppy that you're not getting. And actually, in the back of my mind, as soon as I saw that message, I pictured structure, routine, responsibility, a reason to get out of bed in the morning, a heartbeat, a companion, and all of these things I knew, tick, 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 tick. In the back of my mind, I thought, that's it, that's what I need. So 1 week later, I had Odie on the train down from Edinburgh back to Newcastle, where I was staying at the time, as my solution to an extended period of loneliness, I guess. And immediately having that routine, having that thing to care for, having that thing to look after, having that companion, having that thing to stare at, make eye contact with, confide in, everything changed very quickly for me. And just walking around the northeast of England, people were like, oh, how's he doing? How's his toilet training? I wasn't engaging in psychoanalysis. I was just speaking to people again, and that made such a difference for me and got me to the point where I was confident enough to socialize again, to talk to strangers, to do all these things where I didn't just feel paralyzed by the depression that I was experiencing. So Pig was the catalyst to my recovery from a very extended period of depression that ultimately ended in a suicide attempt. And the real challenge there was the loneliness behind it. He brought me out of the loneliness, but it doesn't need to be a dog that does. Obviously, you guys that are paying attention today are aware of the power of dogs, but I don't want this to be misconstrued as if you're feeling lonely, get a dog, as that would be very, very poor advice and not advocating responsible dog ownership. But nonetheless, Odie was the key that unlocked the door for me, which was talking about my feelings, and allowed me to abandon that masculine ego side of things and really come to terms with how I was feeling and then take the necessary steps to move forwards. So for me, Pig has now become an integral part of keeping me social, keeping me with a routine, walking him, and now Harley. There is a second dog in the mix who is too attached to her mother to come over here. It's very clear favoritism from her. We now have 2 dogs. They're a key part of our structure and routine. They keep us accountable. They keep us just happy. There's always a smile on the face when they're chewing on a bone in the corner or stealing toys from one another or eating my socks. Harley. Pig just farts a lot. Beyond that, he's very easy to look after. But these two are integral for us. They've both been a huge part of our lives. And for me, as somebody who's given you a real brief whistle-stop tour of my experience with mental health, this Mental Health Awareness Week, I just want you all to be very thankful for these little creatures that we all have. But more importantly, appreciate how much talking to strangers on the street, using them as catalysts for open conversation, how powerful that can be. Mental Health Awareness Week is 1 week of a year where we should focus on mental health awareness year round. So use this week as an opportunity, as a springboard to start a conversation that you might not otherwise have had, to then carry it into the future, because mental health is something that we all have in the same way that we all have physical health. So to only give it attention for a week does seem a little bit problematic when we think about the bigger picture. But Odie is a huge part of mine. He's a huge part of other people's, as he has been looked after, shed on, farted near, eaten things off the floor of people's houses all over the country, and he has really touched many lives. And I think that's a fantastic thing and something I'm very eternally grateful for. He helped me with my recovery. He has shared that story on national television even, so it's blissful ignorance, shall we call it. But the bottom line is, start a conversation this week that you might not otherwise have had, to use that to carry it into the future. And next time you're on a dog walk and somebody's really keen to talk to you about your dog or their dog or whatever's going on in their life, just listen a bit more intently or ask a little bit deeper, because we are all one conversation away from changing a person's life, and that is not an opportunity that I would like to miss out on. So from me to you, I hope that this Mental Health Awareness Week can open up some doors, open up some conversations, and Odie, completely off his own accord, is going to wave you all goodbye.